Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mind Your Mental. Just a reminder that this podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. I know they are hard to find, and I get that. I have a bunch of resources on my website if you need them, but I am not your clinician. I am a psychologist, but I am not your psychologist. So if you need any specific help, please look for the help of a licensed mental health professional. Learn all you can learn from the podcast. Enjoy the episode. All right. So once again, thank you so much for coming to this show, Nedra. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I think one of the things that I feel as though is incredibly helpful to discuss is ability to respect your boundaries and acknowledge what they are. But it comes up a lot with my patients when it comes to different generations, right? Like a lot of times I am dealing with individuals who are trying to acknowledge the fact that, for example, say they're trying to have a conversation with a family member, or a family member is trying to have a conversation with them and they're not in the right space to do it, right? Like they notice that either they're too exhausted or they don't have the mental capacity for it right now, or they notice that the person is being disrespectful. And even though it's an important conversation, they're like, I don't really feel as though mentally I can provide the energy that it deserves. An individual is trying to express that and it being seen as disrespect, right? What would your response be to that scenario? Because my patients come in with that all the time. And a lot of times they will continue with the conversation and then they don't feel good about it. They don't feel good about what they said during that moment. And they tried to advocate for themselves. They stated like, hey, this is getting kind of heated. Also, like, it's like midnight or something. Like I'm letting you know all of these things about why I don't feel as though I can give this conversation the energy that it deserves. And it does deserve energy, but you want to keep having the conversation. And you're telling me I'm being disrespectful. And if anything, I'm trying to respect you because I know that this relationship deserves me being fully present, and I can't do that. How would you address that? Especially since it's being perceived as disrespect. Like, I'm your mom. You're going to talk to me whenever I want to talk. And I'm like, not me, not you, mom. She listens to the show. I'm saying a patient.
Yeah, I think in our conversations with people, we reserve the right to pause certain conversations when it is kind of this continuous circle of us repeating ourselves, saying the same thing in different ways, using, various examples. Like there are some conversations that we don't get to the bottom of.
Hey, everyone, just a reminder that Mind Your Mental is not just a podcast. It is also a amazing community, if I do say so myself. It's phenomenal. I mean, you get more access to me. What more could you want in this life? So if you want to join the community, if you're not already on the community, go to my social media. My social media is the same, Raquel Martin, PhD, and DM me the word community so you can get details on joining this amazing flipping community. You get more access to me, y'all. Like, I'm a delight. All right. Hope to see you there.
And we need to be able to say, let's pause this and return to it. Maybe after a good night's rest, maybe after a cup of warm milk, we can come back to this. But right now we have talked until we can't talk anymore. So being able to take that pause is helpful. And I was also thinking as you were, explaining that situation a bit, there are some people we don't want to have the conversation with because they just can't hear anything. And I think from what I've seen, like on social media, is like avoiding people is terrible. And it's like, some people are really jerks and not good people to talk to. And we don't talk about that enough. That is it avoidance when you've tried to have a conversation with a person or you've tried to set a boundary with a person and they push back and they're like, you're not talking to me about it. It's like, I actually did. I actually did talk to you about it, but they want over communication on a topic that they're unwilling to bend on. Because that happens a lot in families too. You mentioned parents, and that happens a lot with parents where they're like, I want you to be able to talk to me, but what they're not saying is, but only about the things that I'm willing to talk to you about. And so when you bring these sort of conversations to them, it can go on because the resolution for them is you not having this issue with them.
Yeah. And I think that can happen a lot. And I also feel like one of the issues is this whole mindset that like I'm too old to change, or there's no way I can modify this. And I've always felt as though when people state that they're too old to change or anything in that realm, what they're really stating is that I've decided that my comfort is more important than our relationship.
Mm.
Because I in no way think anyone's too old to change. I think everything is a decision. And I'm not one of those people who feels as though it's easier. I don't want to say mince words. I'm a fairly direct person, but direct not in the form of like blunt honesty, direct in the form of like somebody hurts my feelings, I'm going to say, "Oh, that hurt my feelings." And or if there's a scenario where someone's like, "Oh, can we continue discussing it?" I feel as though we better to discuss this later because right now I have a lot of thoughts running through my head and I really would love to be able to organize them before we talk. Like my processing speed isn't going at your processing speed, right? And I've always felt that is incredibly helpful because, and my friends and family tell me the same thing, you don't really have to have guesswork with me when it comes to like if you hurt my feelings or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, because I just state it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no, oh, I wonder if that upset her. I would state if something upset me. And I think sometimes people feel like they're protecting the relationship or, yeah, I think a lot of times people think they're protecting the relationship by not sharing themselves or not expressing it. And what I've learned honestly is that just builds resentment. Like I think that actually builds resentment in the relationship because you're not sharing what you're feeling. And then you're wondering why they're not reading your mind and they're not picking up what you're putting down, but you're not sharing. And I think there are many reasons why people don't share. It could be because they're uncomfortable. It could be because they haven't identified it. It could be because the last time they shared, this person like lost their mind and it didn't go well and that keeps happening, to which I would state you need to identify whether you want this person in your life. But I think there's this thought process at times that by people pleasing or not sharing how you really feel, you're actually contributing to the strengthening of that relationship. And I think that's actually contributing to the detriment of that relationship.
Yeah, it's certainly building the resentment in the relationship. And I think sometimes when we are avoiding certain conversations with people, we have to identify, has there been harm in the past, or do we think that this person is just incapable based on how we've seen them show up?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, there are some people who are so disheveled and unable to control their own lives. We don't want to put more on their plate. So saying to them like, "Oh, I'm upset, I'm overwhelmed," it just seems like they're already having a lot going on. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we're trying to protect people from having to deal with another thing, and that thing being us and our stuff. And so for their protection, we're like, "Oh, I know you're dealing with this thing and that thing, so I don't even want to bring another thing to you." And then there's, this sect of people who I would say have some pretty rigid boundaries in the form of they may have communicated somewhere along the way that they need help, they need assistance. It wasn't honored. And so they just stopped. It wasn't taken serious.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that, "Oh, I've never said it before." It's like, I said it. I'm not going to keep repeating it. And so I'll just do
Yeah.
it on my own. I'll suffer in silence because I have communicated this. So there are people, all on the spectrum of, "Oh my gosh, they never communicate anything," to they communicate it all the time. And I think the people who appear stressed are highly rewarded. The people who appear problemed are rewarded for that. It's like, "Oh my gosh, you're disheveled. Your shirt is on backwards. Let's help this person." When in actuality, my shirt may be on the right way, but guess what? I'm as disheveled. I just appear a little differently.
Well, so when people have decided to do that aspect of like shutting down, do you feel as though, well, what advice would you give to those people who their next step was shutting down, like to get out of that space or to move to a healthier aspect? Because I would think that the shutting down, I mean, when you shut down these things, you're not able to progress. One of my patients mentioned that, like, keeping my feelings to myself or building up this wall has kept out all the bad. And I was like, right, right. Are you aware that it has also kept out the good?
Mm.
Because it's not like you can her wall was no relationships. I do work. I do all this. I have my routine. Of course, like this came at the result of like being hurt significantly. And her just being like, I will never go through that pain again. I genuinely don't feel as though I could recover. I'm just going to shut everything off and I'm just going to not do anything. But then things would also come up where she was also clearly dissatisfied with this, but she felt that there was no other option, right? Like she wasn't really showing that she was happy with this whole shutting things off, but she felt that was the only way to survive in this moment.
Yeah, I think there are some folks who feel like my problem is so big, and it's actually the people you're taking your problem to. Because sometimes we go to the same person because we feel like this person should be there for us. This happens a lot in families. Even when we may have a parent who has demonstrated not having the emotional capacity or whatever it is, it's like you will keep going to this person like, this is my parent. This is the person who has to have this capacity. You will keep talking to, so-and-so friend about this thing. And the expectation is like, they should have this capacity. So when they demonstrate they don't have it, it's like, oh, I have to keep all my problems to myself. When in actuality, you may need to speak to your mother-in-law. You may need to speak to your coworker. You may need to talk to your neighbor. It's not that your problem can't, be set on the shoulders of someone else, but the people you're taking it to and looking for a certain response, they can't help you. So it's not that no one can help you move. No one can help you, review your paper. No one can help you with your children. It's like you're going to these people who can't help, and you're taking that message as all people will not help me, therefore I will not do blank. All people are terrible, therefore I will not date. You've dated 5 people. That's always an interesting, when I have clients who are like, everybody I've dated, I'm like, girl, how many people you dated?
Listen,
and it'd be 6. I'm like, you 6 people? Come on, man. 6 people.
When I heard statements like,
that ain't enough.
Men are terrible or women are terrible, I was like, man, that's crazy. I have not met all men and women. How did you find the time to meet every single man and woman in this?
You must be up like, all night and day meeting people. Just
I just be like, yo, like,
you're well traveled.
That's a lot. I don't know how you found the time to do that. And you came to therapy on time. I appreciate the sacrifice, because meeting every man and woman in the world, since they're all terrible,
you got to keep
to meet
going.
all of them.
You have to keep going. That's the thing with relationships. Like, just because one relationship does not work out, it doesn't mean you'll never have a close friend again, or you'll never have another partner, or you'll never have anybody who could be a mother figure. It's like, keep looking, keep pursuing relationships, and you'll find something. I have a client who is super successful. And one of the things we talk about is the time she put into becoming successful. It does not mirror the time you've put into developing personal relationships. And that's why those relationships are not great, because you've gone to college twice. So you've gone to college for 6 years. You went K through 12. You still read books. You got to have a certain amount of credits for your training. You got all this stuff. You haven't read one relationship book. You haven't read no relationships. But of course you're going to be great at this career. Your whole life has prepared you for it. There's not a lot of training we get to communicate in our relationships with people. There's not a lot of training that we get around how to properly apologize. There's not a lot of training we get around how to pick people who can be healthy for us, how to reduce our stress, how to, so all of this stuff we have to learn. And I'm not saying you take, 16 years to learn it, the time you invested in your education, but, one book out of 10, please make it a book that's supportive of your mental health and relationships. One training out of 10, can we please make it, a little Can we take all those business podcasts out of there and throw in a little bit of relationship? We have to think about, these other ways that we can impact our life. And it's not just, oh my gosh, everybody else needs to do this stuff. It's like, you know what, to some extent, I am in my life too. So that means that I have to handle these relationships and these interactions with people differently. Because let me tell you something. If you don't get better at being in relationships, that's when we experience the same stuff over and over.
I think there are many times where we haven't learned about the importance of also fostering relationships. And as someone who academically was reared in academia, where it's like publish or perish, get your stuff out there, you don't want to get intellectually scooped, I find myself being at war with myself when it comes to going too hard in the paint, and also remembering that I have 2 toddlers and I have a husband and my friends, and trying to be more responsive, because I have to work all the time to be like, do I need to take on this task? But from the outside, there will be many people who will just be like, telling me like, oh yeah, take on that extra gig. Who knows when that other thing will come up again? Who knows when you'll get that other opportunity? Who knows when you'll get to talk to this person again? And I can see how many people struggle with that, of understanding the aspect of fostering strong relationships, and understanding not even just relationships with others, relationship with yourself, because the whole hustle culture or grind culture, the thing that they're looking to prioritize are career stuff. And there are many times when I want to say yes to something, but I know that it will take me away from fostering my relationships in the way that it needs to be developed, right? And I think that's something that needs to be focused on more. We do have a million business podcasts, and we do have a million things about, being 2 times better, but a lot of things that suffer are relationships. I'm not very responsive. I'm terrible at it. We were talking earlier about the fact that like I was traveling twice a month in addition to everything else. I'm teaching 4 classes. I'm advising 30 students, doing publications. I have 2 toddlers and a husband. And I noticed that when I was traveling more than twice a month, my boys were getting cranky. It was a whole thing. And I had to just realize that like at this point, we can't go over 2 speaking events a month. Does that sting sometimes? Yes. It stings on one realm of my priorities, like career, but my other priority is also my family. Right. Yeah. So I don't think there's enough on that. Building relationships take time and energy. Honestly,
oh my gosh. Adult friendships. I mean, I feel like we could do a whole pot on adult friendships, like making new friends as an adult, the amount of time that it requires to really nurture those relationships. I was thinking this morning that I needed to text someone. I think we went to lunch maybe once last year. And it's like, it's there. The friendship is like, there's a lot of potential, but it's like, we don't have the time to really build it. And I think of, the friends I've met in the last, 7 or so years. It's like that time that you need to put into like, okay, does this person actually watch reality TV? Like, is this a good person to invite over? Yeah. Like, do they like to be outdoorsy? Like, you're still figuring these things out in conjunction with working, parenting, partnering, all your old friends, your family. Oh my gosh, my grandma's sick. It's like, it can be, a lot, even though it's really necessary. So with all of that in mind, we have to prioritize who's important and what's important. And sometimes we're not doing that. We're just like, I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to be all the relationships. I can't be a good friend to everyone. I can't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Listen. Okay. Yes. Say it again.
I cannot be a good friend to everyone because, I have always been a small amount of friends kind of person, because it's like, I actually want to send you something for your birthday. If I had 100 friends, I can't send everybody everything for their birthday.
Or remember. You're not going to remember.
Even if I'm not sending you anything, I want to remember your birthday. I want to say, if you have something, I want to be able to try to come. And, the more people we add to that, the less we can show up in these relationships in a really meaningful way. It turns into, I don't know if you remember that movie, but 27 Dresses, where she was just like running from wedding to wedding.
And then sacrificing herself the entire time.
Yeah.
She was always the maid of honor. It was a lot. I don't think people... I feel like it's important to address that and understand that, because I too have always kept my circle pretty small. Part of it was also, I'm from Philly, and like trust-wise, we just not, East Coasters not the best at it at times. So like I've always like kept my circle kind of smaller because I'm blessed with having just amazing friends. But I don't think people realize the same way. I was telling my students the other day, I'm an advisor, and they were like, oh, you're a good advisor. I said, I'm a terrible advisor. I'm actually not a good advisor. You guys deserve way more of me than you get. That is not, it's not because of you. It's because like I'm teaching 4 classes, and it's also incredibly difficult to teach these classes as well as advise 30 students. So I'm like, you guys think I'm a good advisor because I'm a good person and you love taking my courses, but I am not a good advisor. I'm not. And I'm okay with stating that the responsibilities placed on me as a professor honestly do not provide me the opportunity to be a good advisor. It's not going to happen, right? I'm adequate when you guys come into my office, but I was like, I'm not a good advisor. And it's okay for you guys to acknowledge that, yeah, there are times when I could be more responsive and you wish you could reach out to me better. I said, you guys just happen to like me. So you're going to say I'm good at everything, but I'm not a good advisor. That's just what it is. It's easy to be bad at, for me, it's easy for me to be an adequate or bad friend. It takes time for me to be a good person, to a good friend, for me to be present during conversations, for me to check in during that time that I knew you were up for that promotion and you were worried about it, checking in to see how the interview went. That takes time. And when people, I've heard someone stating that someone said like, you know, why do people who are married state that like, oh, you know, marriage is work. And I think it's because marriage is the only relationship most of the time where people are more comfortable talking about the work that went into it. They don't talk about the work that goes into friendships. They don't talk about how it's hard to make friends when you get older and how your friends may change. They don't talk about how it's a bit easier to be a bad friend, how that may make someone feel. And even like transitioning out of friends, like that's not really discussed. But I've always felt that like it's easy to be bad, to forget to call. It's hard for me to remember that, like, okay, say I have 500 friends and then 300 have kids, but then I forgot to go to this birthday. I don't know if this person is going through a change in their life regarding their partnerships with other people. This person had a promotion. I've always felt better having a smaller circle because I like to be present with people. And the greater my circle is, the less likely I'm able to do that. People feel some kind of way. A lot of times the people who have been here longer feel some kind of way. Like, I've been here since you were in 8th grade. What you mean this person you just met, you went to their thing, they brunch, and I wanted you to come to the birthday party. Well, they asked me first. Well, you got too many people asking you stuff. Agreed.
Well, our friends could be really helpful and just not have any brunches.
You know, like,
I mean, if you want to help me out, just don't celebrate your birthday. Just stop doing that.
Or having events where I can't bring my kids, or you say I can bring my kids, and I'm like, that's what you think. First of all, no, I can't. Stop saying
They're not going to let you relax.
Yes.
Those and even kids will not let you relax. You know, I had a friend over Sunday, and I had a talk with my kids before my friend came because she was bringing her 3 kids. I said, hey, while those kids are here, I am not your playmate.
Don't talk to me.
Go pick out some stuff to do. If you come talk to me too much, I'm going to ask them to leave. So like, just go, because your presence isn't enough for my kids because they're still asking me to play Nintendo. You're here to entertain them. So be entertained by your company, and I will enjoy my guests. My kids, actually, they did a very good job. I was quite impressed. It was like oh my gosh, I don't know if I don't know what it was, but I also removed myself from their presence, which is something I typically don't do. I went and I sat in the basement, and it was lovely. There was because a lot of it is just like, I just want to know that you're around. I just want to keep connecting with you, even though, you know, my people are here. I just want to come and get a hug, and I just want to come and, you know, do all these other things. And it's like, I just want to talk to this adult about non-kid things. And, you know, all these memes we've been seeing, all of this celebrity stuff. Like, we just want to have a conversation that's between us. So, you know, I think that parenting adds another layer, but I will tell you, I love having friends who do not have kids. I have quite a few of them. And I know for some folks, it's like, oh, you can't be friends with people who not married. You can't be friends with.
Oh, that's not me at all.
My friends are a variety bunch because I want to hear about your dates. I love to hear about your single life. Oh my gosh, your house is so clean. I will tell my kids, I have one friend in particular. They're like, we've never been over her house, and you won't go.
And you won't.
Because her house is so nice and kid free. You're not about to go in her house and be running. Yeah. You're not going to kick your feet up on her little nice sofa. No, she doesn't have kids, and you will not be the kid there. We are not even going to have her. So they went when they were babies. They don't remember. But I'm like, you will not be back until you're like 60.
Don't remember.
They don't even remember. It was like you were breastfeeding. You definitely don't remember. But that's when I had to take you.
I could contain you. You was on. You had to be
you
fed
were strapped
every 2
on
hours.
My body. Yep. But now I'm not going to tell you not to touch her mask that she got while she was traveling. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, one of my very best friends, Cassie, she's single. She doesn't have any children. And she stay traveling, and I just love it. I legit be like, are you in town this weekend? She'd be like, no. I'm like, where you at? Where you at this weekend, girl? What you doing? Like, I love it. And even with the stuff with people like, oh, you can bring your children. No. When I go to stuff and they're like, where are the boys? At home with their dad or with their grandparents? Why didn't you bring them? Because I didn't want to. The people think being touched out is solely like the aspect of physically being touched, but it's also the mental responsibility of like having to, know what my child is doing. Even when I walk into the house, I have this terrible habit. It's not terrible. I have this habit of sitting in my car for a minute before I walk into the house, because as soon as I walk into the house, there is that mental responsibility, and that causes a bit of fatigue for me. So when I'm spending time with my friends and like they don't have their children, or even if they do have their children and I don't bring them with me, I'll be like, I wanted to just enjoy you guys. Like if you need help with your kiddos, it's different. I went to a museum this weekend and they expected me to bring the boys. I said, I'm not bringing these boys to a museum. We just left basketball practice. I can't afford this. They were like, you left them? Yeah, because I wanted to hang out with y'all. I didn't want the mental responsibility because my presence mentally, I can't be fully present when my children are there. And it's not possible to, because I need to know, what was that sound? What was that? Making sure they're okay. Did they eat something? Did they mess up something? I prefer to, if I know that it's a family event and I'm bringing my kiddos, I prepare my brain that way, right? I'm not going to be as present. But if I know it's just me and my friends and I don't have the kids with me, there's just a release valve where I'm able to be more present. I'm not able to be as fully present when I'm with unless my mom's around. When my mom's around, I don't even have to be a parent. It's amazing. I'd be like, aren't you going to get your grandchild? I'm not saying, can you get my child? Aren't you going to get your grandchild? Ma'am, be a grandparent. What you doing? I know you're not eating a meal. Is it your lunch break? Did I tell you can eat? What you doing? Go get them kids, But like, I don't think people grasp that.
And
the mental load, like, oh, you didn't bring the kids? I did not. Let's have a party, y'all. Let's
not party too much, because I have to get up in the morning with those kids.
Oh yeah.
So it's like let's very lightly do something. It might not even be party. We may just need to drink some sparkling water.
I can listen to even like, and you know what's crazy to me? Party is I was able to listen to an explicit song.
Oh.
I was able to eat my food hot.
Oof.
I was able to be, just because, especially when they're with my family members, I was able to unplug from my phone. Because I didn't even think about drink. I don't get to eat my food hot. I don't get to listen to, like, most of the music I listen to. Sometimes they have a cuss word or two. But what I'm listening to around my kids, Anita Baker, all old school. They know Stevie Wonder, or, Bluey soundtrack. I don't want to listen to that all the time. Oh, you know what? I actually, when it comes on the shuffle, cool. But most of the time, we're listening to the most random stuff. I would say we have very eclectic taste. My kids are in like a rock theme right now. We're listening to Feel Good, incorporate Gorillaz. Really big fan of Gorillaz right currently. There's like the Spider-Man theme song. There's also like, they really like the Power Rangers song. I don't know what they're going to do when they realize it's an actual show.
So we have a family fun playlist, and everyone in my home, we get to add to the playlist. And it's, some of it is, 2000s hip hop, R&B, but it's the clean version. Right.
Yes.
So there's lots of Sierra, Missy. There's some Bob Marley on there. There's also some Post Malone and Katy Perry. So it's an assortment. And so it gives my kids the opportunity to be aware of all of the wonders of Rihanna, and also, some of the new stuff like, Corey LeRae, or is that her name? Oh my gosh, whatever. Corey, whoever. Yep, Corey LeRae. And listen to, First Class, all of this stuff. Like, you should know Fergie. You should also know Missy. Yeah. Then you should know a little bit of Prince, but it's, it's the cleaned up version. So I do look for, things that we can listen to together. But I will say, like, when I get in my car, I'll turn on my music and my kids are like, can you turn on family fun playlist?
Goodness, every time.
And I'm like, if you do not allow me to listen to El DeBarge in peace.
All I want, and you know what? I think we need to do a better job of looking for the other music. Because sometimes I don't even...
You
ever hear a song and you didn't realize there was a cuss word in it, and it has happened multiple
story
times.
Of my life.
And I literally be like, all right, well, let's just go. It's called Russell's playlist. And I need to say Russell and Jaden because it's two of them now. But like, sometimes I just be like, man, I don't like those surprises. Like,
I had an unfiltered childhood. Like, I could listen to whatever I wanted to. I could watch whatever I wanted to. I remember being in elementary school and listening to Snoop Doggy Style, like full whatever I wanted to. Girl bent over, different. Like I listened to whatever I wanted to. And so my idea of what is inappropriate, I don't remember things as inappropriate, right? Mm-hmm. And so I may play an old song and I'm like, oh my gosh. I didn't know, because
this ain't the same song I was listening to at 10. Ain't no way.
Is this what Jodeci was saying? Oh my gosh. I never noticed that. Oh, Snoop. Oh, Snoopy.
Our music was so my mom, which is crazy. She did not, it's crazy because like the way she listens to music, we weren't allowed to listen to we listen to the radio, but not like hip hop as much, which is insane because my mom is a huge hip hop. It was old school hip hop. We couldn't listen to like current stuff. I could probably tell you the Temptations album, every single one front to back. Like, she was very specific about that. But books, actually, I could read whatever I wanted. And I remember having a conversation with a colleague about like a book list, recommendation list, and they asked about the age because it was like young adult books and stuff like that. And I was like, I actually struggle with that because, reading Toni Morrison and Zora Neale Hurston and like all these, like Octavia, but like way younger, I actually don't do well with like, oh, these themes are kind of more mature because my books weren't like that. Like, we could read whatever we wanted. So I struggle with that. Like, maybe this is a little too mature. And I'm like, I couldn't tell you because I remember being young reading some of these books and being like, oh, you mean you don't think that's appropriate for a 12-year-old? Wow. Yeah. I read that way younger.
I think when as a therapist, you're more aware of how people were impacted by these things. Like, I have a lot of clients and myself who grew up without those filters, and it strips you of childhood, quite honestly, because there's no play, there's no fun, all of that stuff, because you're like pushed into adulthood. Like, all of these things now. So Power Rangers is no longer going to appeal to you. Yeah. It's like, I'm not watching Power Rangers. I'm not watching, because now I have this broader scope of, no, these other things happen in the world. So these, childlike things are not even appealing to me. So having, myself and my clients go back and sort of consider, like, what is age appropriate? Mm-hmm. If I give them an exercise of go to Target and look at Barbies, like, you don't even think about it, but Barbies have an age.
They do. I've actually never liked Barbies. They always bored me. I'll be honest with you. And like a lot of stuff bored me as a child. I really only really liked books and puzzles. A lot of stuff bored me. Like TV honestly bored me. Like I was like, this is just
I was
not
a
entertaining for
walking
me.
TV guide. Oh my
Really?
gosh. Love TV. Like,
Oh my gosh.
could watch it all day. And I think I created Pinterest before Pinterest was Pinterest. Like, I used to cut outfits out of magazines and like paste them to this thing. And I had like a whole little flip board. I guess that was my version of Pinterest. So I could do that all day and watch TV. Like, all day. Like, I would be like, do we have to leave the house? Because at 5 o'clock, such and such is coming on. And I'd like to be back home.
Nobody had a recorder. You know what I'm saying? Like, you had to physically be present to actually watch. We only had like one floor model TV that maybe it worked. And plus we didn't, you know, I think this was definitely before cable, but there was like never anything on. And I just remember TV never really holding my attention. I think part of it was also a representation thing, but like books, it held my attention more, but to the point where I got in trouble for that. I remember I was on a choir and we were at a performance and we were on stage and I was reading. Now, look, just to clarify, y'all, we were not physically performing. Okay. We were on stage, but the other kids were in front of us. And I was reading a book because we were sitting down. We had finished our part. And my mom came up after the intermission and said, give it to me. Give me the book. And I was like, what's the big deal? Like, we weren't even singing. She said, you're on stage reading a book where you're supposed to be paying attention. And I'm like, we seem to be at an impasse here. Of course I gave her the book, but like, I think the themes of the more mature thing is really important because one of the, like, even with toys, when I give my boys toys, we try to do like the more imaginative play stuff. Having to explain to my son that something doesn't require batteries. Like one birthday, I was like, you know, put on the invitation, like we really appreciate clothes, but if you give gifts, we actually are preferring gifts that don't require batteries, right? And my son was like, what? This doesn't do anything. And I'm like, what? He says, where did the batteries go? And I'm like, I said the corniest thing. My husband to this day looked at me crazy. I said, the batteries are never out on your imagination.
Oh my gosh. That should be a slogan.
My husband looked at me like, yo, that
should be a slogan.
The corniest thing in life.
I could see that in a toy store. I could see, no, I mean, corny, yes, absolutely corny, but also a great marketing slogan. Batteries are never out on your imagination. Yeah. That was very Black mom of you. It was like,
that's why he looked, sometimes we've been together for a minute. Sometimes he'd be like, wow, you are a mom, you know?
Yeah. It's, you know, it's like, I'm hungry. You better hungry your butt to bed. You know, it was just quick on your feet. Yeah.
If you can, he told me, I said, if you can hum, you can hear. Come down here.
Yeah.
like, wow. Because they need imaginative play. Like as mental health professionals, we know they need imaginative play that helps with their critical thinking, that helps with their problem solving. Like a lot of the guests went the same thing with like overly adult themes. Like that leads to another question and stuff can't hold your attention. Children need imaginative play. They need the guesswork of what am I going to do next? Oh, is this like a Lego or is it a spaceship? Like they need that. Everything doesn't require a battery in the first place. And even with the stuff with like screens, like I'm not going to be a person who doesn't say screens, but I feel like you can use screens to your advantage and be reasonable with it. But I think one of the issues is that like, you know, when stuff has batteries, like it takes out your imagination. It's like when I read a book and then I see the film, the characters don't look the way I thought they looked. I created pictures of what they looked like. And now they'll never look like those characters again for me, right? Like Red Harry Potter. Now, when I think of Harry Potter, it's clearly, I forget the actor's name, but that's who he looks like. But that's not who he looked like to me, right? Kids need imaginative play. They need imaginative play. They need stuff without batteries. They need appropriate, like age appropriate stuff. Because it's not even just for them, it's for you. You're not ready to answer these questions about these.
Adults need imaginative play.
Yeah. Some of the guesswork is taken out from our stuff and we need it desperately.
Yeah, adults need it as well. You know, I think adults can significantly benefit from being more childlike.
Oh, yeah.
In so many ways. And I think having that imaginative play, you know, being really connected in our friendships, getting lost in an activity that's not productive, maybe watching some mindless TV you know?
Yeah, and just enjoying it and just enjoying it for being in the moment.
Being in awe of the, I like to teach my kids awe. So a sunset, a daffodil in a grass, a bird flying by. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that butterfly. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, that flower wasn't there yesterday. It's here today. So even awe, like these things we sort of forget because walking with a kid can kind of be like walking with a dog because they will just stop and be like, what is that? And you're like, okay, come on. We got to walk down the street. And it's like, they are really into this dandelion. Mm-hmm. And here we are just casually cutting them, treating them. Oh, it's nothing. But to some of us, it's a flower and a very beautiful one.
I didn't know it was a weed until I got older.
Hey.
My mom kept all of those weeds that I gave her when I walked outside, put them in that cup.
Yep.
And cherished them. I didn't know, literally did not know they were weeds. And I'm like, my mom put those on the table like they were flowers. She loved, and we miss a lot of stuff, right? Like, because their priorities are going to be like fun and stuff like that and slowing down. That's not really our priorities, right? That's why a lot of times when parents are trying to do the hustle and bustle, myself included, our priorities are not going to align, right? Yep. Like, of course they're going to want to take more time. One of the ways I helped out with that was like, my son wants to play for at least 10 minutes before he leaves the house for school. So I wake him up 30 minutes earlier. I just wake him up earlier. Like, you're in a way better mood. And I think your teachers deserve a less cranky student. So I'm gonna just wake you up earlier. Does he notice it? Not really. He notices that he gets to play for extra 10 minutes now. Mm-hmm. He notices that. Mm-hmm. But like, I think that we could, and not even just the aspect, I think we don't have enough creativity in our lives as adults. I feel like there's always a thought process of like monetizing it. I crochet like blankets and stuff. And I remember giving them to family members and people being like, oh, you can sell this. No, I don't want to sell this.
There are enough crochet blankets on Etsy.
Yes, I just like making this. I like being able to like put the time and energy knowing that you're going to give this to your child. I like making it. I like picking out the yarn. I like just the creativity with it. Everything doesn't have to be monetized. Like that I taught myself it. Like, I think this whole aspect, we lose that. Like there's always some thought process of what was the productivity. The productivity was I enjoyed it. You're a lot better when you have some aspect of joy. It made me feel better.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think, yeah, you're right. Adults need more imaginative play. That's going to be your homework. I might just start doing homework. Find something that you just find something fun. I want to get into tufting with rugs because that looks fun. Just something creative. I found that like most of my stuff that gives me joy has to be opposite of like my work stuff. Like my work stuff, like, is gray. People are gray. That's just what it is. Like there's no black and white answer when it comes to therapy or mental health. Most of the stuff that I enjoy the most are like pretty, like there's a right answer and a wrong answer. Cause I don't get that in my everyday. So like if I'm crocheting, oh, that knot was wrong. I take it out and I fix it. I don't have to know about the thought process or the intent behind the knot. I don't, I don't have to delve into the perspective. If I crocheted that wrong, it's yarn. Pull the knot out and do it. Versus work is like, well, let's look at the perspectives. Let's zoom out a little bit. Maybe we need to zoom in. Maybe we need to slow down. Like it's very gray. Most of the stuff I like is more like cut and dry because my work will never reside there, like ever. I work with people. People aren't robots. We're never gonna know. Yeah, but that's awesome. I feel like it could be a whole show about friendships, especially aging out of friendships. Because I've been a lot of my patients are dealing with that right now, actually. Like,
aging out.
Yeah, transitioning out of certain relationships and realizing that like the nostalgia is not enough to maintain the relationship anymore. Like they've tried and it's just not working.
Yeah. It's sad, And I don't think we need to end those. I think we can reduce them in many cases.
Okay.
Because I have found that there are points in life where we may want to return to things. Mm-hmm. And so if we're like elimination, we have to have a talk. I'm done. Annihilate. It's like, well, that doesn't leave room for when that mutual friend's grandfather gets sick and for you all to come back together.
Yeah.
So it's not that you don't need to have the relationship at all. It's just less. Like
it's evolved. It's evolved into something different.
It's evolved into yearly connection. I think what can be strange is when one person is trying to have the relationship remain what it has always been, or even to increase it, and you're not in that same space.
Yeah. And then at that point, what happens on the next step? Or somebody wants more that you can give.
Yeah.
And you have to, you kind of just have to see if they're okay with that. Some people may be okay with that. They may be like, okay, I understand. Or it's evolved a little bit and I understand that. And we're just going to keep the relationship. We're going to change the relationship in that realm. And some people may not and be like, no, I want more. And I mean, that's, that may be something that has to be dealt with as well. But I appreciate that because I think it does. Some things just evolve.
Well, you wanting more doesn't mean that the other person wants more. And it's two people in a relationship. And so you wanting more is really good. And if this other person agrees to it, then you all can have more. And if the other person disagrees, then you can't have more in the relationship. And that's really tough. So I want more doesn't actually mean anything until you have a partner in the relationship saying, I do as well.
I love that. Well, Nedra, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're everywhere. So tell people where they can find you. I'm sure everybody knows where to find you, but tell them where they can find you as well on the interwebs, as well as if you have any upcoming projects as well.
Yes. Well, I too have a podcast called You Need to Hear This. So please check out my podcast. I have books, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, Drama Free. Both of those books have workbooks that accompany them. And if you want to find out more about me, you can go to my website, which is nedratawwab.com. I promise if you put in Nedra, Tawwab is going to pop up. It's not that many of us, so you don't have to do the guesswork on, is it 2 A's, 2 W's, 2 B's? Just put in Nedra. I'll pop up.
Oh, and I would also add, you also have the Set Boundaries deck as well.
I have the deck. I also have a calendar, which I look at every day on my work desk. It's just sitting here. I have a boundaries calendar. The 2025 one will be available at the end of the year. The 2024 one is no longer available. But for next year, please get ahead and pre-order. It is wonderful. This desk calendar is like me screaming at me. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I just want to turn it face down. I'm like, what?
You over here checking yourself.
Checking myself and don't like it. So
yeah, and I really like the deck too, because one, you have scenarios and there's different scenarios for each card. You have like boundary basics and scenario cards and strategy cards and conversation cards, and I feel like it's a nice tool as well.
Yes, and for all the therapists listening, there is a boundaries flip chart that you can use with your clients, which is a really helpful tool for helping them identify their boundary issues with your assistance.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it. Everyone, all of Nedra Glover Tawwab's information will also be in the show notes. And enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, your week. And please remember to be kind to yourself.